Warm welcome to everyone to this first episode of my video essay. Let's hope that I will accomplish everything I set out to do within the framework of these videos. Let's start this essay by going through some historical landmarks. Landmarks that each in their own way have helped to establish the present day ideas of our modern Western democracies. It is vital for my project that these landmarks should be looked into more closely. Otherwise we will lack the necessary perspective to actually decipher where we are currently in the history of democratic governance of human societies. The first thing in history to look into happened in ancient Greece, more precisely what happened in the city of Athens during the time that it was democratically governed. Athens at that time in ancient Greece was a city that was very influential both culturally and economically. So those of you who expect some really deep or profound insights about the issue of democracy in ancient Greece, you probably will be disappointed, and I suggest you lower your expectations. The points that I'm going to do are very simple ones, and probably something that you already are familiar with. Especially if you studied political history and or political philosophy. The period of democracy in ancient Greece lasted almost 2 centuries. At the end of this time, democracy was replaced by oligarchy, and it was preceded, this period was preceded by a brief period of tyranny. Now when it comes to tyranny is always an issue that relates to a particular person. Tyrants are like mob rulers, mob leaders. They are lawless rulers. Laws don't apply to them. They do whatever they want. At least that's how the Greeks understood the core of their nature, the core of these people. Oligarchy becomes the de facto way of ruling a society, when in truth society is run by few influential people. And this state of falling into oligarchy is what happened at the end of this period of almost 200 years of democratic ruling inside the city of Athens. How did this rise to prominence in ancient Athens happen? How did democracy become the thing? First of all, there was an uprisal of average citizens of Athens. A rebellion. During this rebellion, average citizens, of whom many of them felt that they've been enslaved by the few, just we're not having this anymore. And before we go any further, let me remind you also of that one, that the reign of democracy was never in sure hands, in that sense that during this 200-year period there would at least 2 times when democracy was put on pause, interrupted. In both cases, behind the veil of publicity, there were instances of political manipulation and even political oppression. So, if we just look at these outer facts, facts that are known by most of you, or at least some of you, what can we learn already from these facts? We can learn the hard truth that the period of 200 years of democracy was never some halcyonic period, a golden age of endless happiness and carefree. Over the course of years, when democracy was there and it was practiced, there was constant fear that its end would be right around the corner. I'm not going to go too deeply to the fact, to the undeniable fact that during the time when democracy, Athens was run democratically, more or less. Athens was a slave economy. Women had no rights to vote, etc. Everyone knows these facts about the life in ancient Greece at that time. And as unfortunate and as dehumanizing all that was, it is not the focus of this approach or take, what I'm proposing here. The fact that I want to emphasize here is that democracy in Athens, when it happened, that time that it happened, was a historical and social construct. And what I mean by this is that there was an appraisal at the beginning of it, an evaluation of what had happened with this single person before, and then putting something in place to try to ensure the same would not happen again. And after that there were repeated processes of vote casting by citizens, which became an established tradition. This is a social construct. This is a construct of social habit or repeated pattern that happens within time. And looking at this social construct, for me it seems that the Greeks of that time were constantly aware that the possibility of undoing of this type of governance was constantly present. That there were forces within human hearts that were there in the shadows, constantly waiting for the right moment, which would cause the destruction of democracy in the city. It's almost as if democracy could, to a certain degree, be described as a living biological thing. It was as if its demise, its inevitable end, was already programmed in its genetical code, right from the moment it came to be, as a historical and social construct. And here we come to the core message of this first episode, for me at least, I think. And this core message is that while democracy was there, while it had its hands on the reins of power, inside the city, inside human hearts, there was already in place the opposing forces of Eris, the goddess of Eris, the opposing forces of strife and discord. And these forces were not some sort of alien foreign nations trying to undermine democracy in Athens. They were already within the people, living, existing people who were inside the city. As little as I have studied ancient cultures, it is my hunch that this understanding of strife and discord inside, already working inside the established traditions of democracy, was very much something that the Greeks were aware. They knew this. They knew that no matter how well things would be in terms of commerce and how well things would be for an average Athenian free man, the wealth and the cultural impact that the city would have, its golden era, that all that would have its limited run. And why was that? Because during this time there were constantly influential forces inside the city that were not impressed by democracy or in any way in support of it. And this is also something that people should understand, that during the time when democracy, Athens was run democratically, it was not looked at as something to idealize about, or something an average citizen would look as a higher value, or something that should be put on the pedestal. Of course, those who were right in the center of the political at that time saw the benefits of it, but even then it didn't have clout as a form of governance, kind of like universal acclaim that this is the best form of governance. And all the time during this time there were elites, influential families and supporters of these, especially philosophers, who looked down on democracy. But the matter of fact was that the time when democracy was there, what was visible for everyone is that average citizens of Athens would get more wealth and liberties, whereas elites would not have as much benefits from it. And we should all remember that the universal acclaim or status that this and similar forms of governor are better than other options was only given to this time by posterity, future generations. Greeks who were living at that time, they didn't have this halo of admirable attached to democracy. There was only awareness that historical and social constructs were always engulfed by opposing forces of strife and discord. The forces of Eris, the goddess of Eris, which would bring about democracy's end at any time. How can I be so sure about this, that the Greeks knew about that? At the same time that there was this golden age of democracy going on in Athens, there was also other big things happening in Athens. It was also during the same time that there was this golden age of ancient Greece's theatre, the tragedies and playwrights, famous playwrights, cultural life surrounding amphitheatres, prominent, renowned sort of like celebrities of different types, different kinds of playwrights. Sophocles, for instance. Theatres were loosely associated with religious life, particularly Dionysus worshipping, and the history of it tied it to that one. These plays were constantly reminding Greeks of the fact that these forces of strife and discord were right in the middle of all of them. They were not something that was pushed outside of the city. When you were a citizen of Athens and you saw that and you heard that there is a new play in the amphitheatre and you walked in and you watched it, you were not there just as any human audience for these playwrights, for the people who run this theatre. They were seen as representatives of demos. They were representatives of the people of Athens. And this very same fact was emphasized even further by the fact that some of the actors placed themselves sitting in the middle of the audience. And what all this would mean? Well, what all this means is that not only these theatres would put on display the divine play of these forces of strife and discord in front of the audience, but when they themselves moved themselves in the middle of the audience, they kind of like, almost like took the audience by hand and showed them that, look, this is not just something that you watch these forces of violent forces doing their violent play. The same forces are amongst you. And if this all sounds a bit abstract, let me give you an example, a very good example, finest example of this actually. There is this trilogy of plays by Aeschylus, which is called Oresteia. And on the third act of this series of plays, at the end of it, the play actually celebrates the way that the city of Athens has somewhat pacified these forces of goddess of Eris, these forces of discord and strife. So the reason why Greeks were so aware of how fleeting and how vulnerable their democracy was, is that they were constantly being made aware that these forces are there. And here we come to the final words of this first part of my video essay. From my point of view, if the citizens of ancient Athens were so aware of this, so should we. Nothing else needs to be added. So should we. If they were aware of it. Modern life is so full of things happening all around you that you can easily lose sight, you can't see wood from the trees, so to speak. But I mean, this is something that each and every one of us who lives in the present day society, that here we have a wood, here we have something essential. But that's all for now. We'll leave it at that for now. And once again, I want to remind you that if you liked what I just did, please subscribe, because then you get similar kinds of videos also in the reminder of the videos when they come, when I publish them. So press that subscribe button, or if nothing else, it's also good if you just press like button. Both of them help me if I want to make more of these videos in the future. That's all for now. I see you in the next video, in which we'll be going through some facts that relate to French Revolution. That's it for now. Have a nice day, night, evening, morning, wherever you are in the world, and I see you in the next episode.